It was just another Tuesday afternoon on The Ellen Show, filled with the usual rhythm of laughter, applause, those spontaneous moments that made daytime television feel like magic. The studio buzzed with energy as Ellen bounced onto the stage in her signature light blue blazer, white sneakers squeaking against the polished floor. Next to her sat her older sister, Sophia, 16, whose protective arm never left Lily's shoulders. Sophia had been Lily's voice to the world for so long that she could translate every expression, every gesture, every silent wish that crossed her little sister's face. The show progressed through its usual segments. Ellen danced with audience members, surprised a teacher with a new car, and shared funny animal videos that had everyone doubled over with laughter. But during a commercial break, Sophia stood up from her seat with a determination that caught the attention of a nearby producer. "Excuse me," Sophia whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "My sister and we've been watching Ellen for 3 years. Every single day. And Lily, Sophia paused, looking down at her sister, who was staring intently at Ellen. Across the studio, she has something she wants to give Ellen, but she can't. She doesn't speak to strangers." The producer, a kind woman named Rachel, who had worked on the show for 8 years, knelt down Sophia's level. She had seen countless audience members with special requests, but something about these two sisters felt different. There was a weight in Sophia's words, a story that needed to be heard. "What kind of something?" Rachel asked gently. Sophia reached into her small purse and pulled out a carefully wrapped package, no bigger than a jewelry box. The wrapping paper was covered in rainbows, clearly chosen by a child, and tied with a yellow ribbon that matched Lily's dress. "She made this for Ellen," Sophia explained. "She's been working on it every day after school for 6 months. But she has selective mutism. She only talks to me and our mom. The doctors say it's from anxiety, from being too scared to speak. But when she watches Ellen, she smiles, really smiles. And yesterday, she whispered to me that she wishes she could be brave like Ellen." Rachel felt her heart skip a beat. In 8 years of working in television, she had learned to recognize the moments that transcended entertainment, the moments when real life broke through the scripts and reminded everyone why they did this work. This was one of those moments. "Let me talk to Ellen," Rachel said softly. When the show came back from commercial, Ellen was mid-joke about her weekend adventures with Portia when Rachel appeared at the edge of her peripheral vision, giving her a subtle hand signal that meant something important was happening in the audience. Ellen, who had hosted thousands of shows and developed an almost supernatural ability to read her crew's signals, smoothly wrapped up her story and looked out at the sea of faces. "You know," Ellen said, her voice taking on that warm, conversational tone that made every audience member feel like they were sitting in her living room. "Sometimes the best parts of this show aren't the planned segments. They're the unexpected moments when real life reminds us what's important." She walked to the edge of the stage, her eyes scanning the crowd until they landed on Sophia and Lily. Something about the way the older girl was protectively holding the younger one's hand, the way they both looked at her with such hope and nervousness, told Ellen everything she needed to know. "I understand there's someone in our audience today who has something special to share," Ellen said, her voice gentle but carrying clearly through the studio. "Sophia and Lily, right?" Sophia's eyes widened in surprise and gratitude. She nodded, helping Lily to her feet. But as soon as the studio lights seemed to focus on them, as soon as hundreds of faces turned their way, Lily froze. Her small body went rigid, her breathing became shallow, and she gripped Sophia's hand so tightly that her knuckles went white. Ellen noticed the change immediately. She had interviewed thousands of people over the years, and she had developed an instinct for reading fear, for recognizing when someone was overwhelmed. Without hesitation, she made a decision that broke every standard television protocol. Ellen walked down the steps from the stage and into the audience. The cameras followed her, but Ellen wasn't performing anymore. She moved through the rows of seats with the casual ease of someone visiting friends, stopping directly in front of Sophia and Lily's row. She sat down in the empty seat next to Lily, bringing herself to the little girl's eye level. "Hi, Lily," Ellen said softly, her voice now stripped of all performance, all entertainment value. This was just Ellen, the person, talking to a child who needed to be seen. "I'm Ellen," Sophia told my friend Rachel, "that you have something for me." Lily looked up at Ellen with those wide brown eyes, and for a moment, the entire studio seemed to hold its breath. The audience, which had been buzzing with energy just moments before, fell completely silent. Even the camera operators seemed to sense that they were witnessing something sacred. Sophia gently nudged the wrapped package into Lily's hands. "Go ahead, Lily," she whispered. "Remember what we practiced." But Lily couldn't move. The weight of all those eyes, all that attention, seemed to press down on her small shoulders. Her hands trembled as she held the package, and tears began to well up in her eyes. Ellen saw the fear, recognized it for what it was, and made another unprecedented decision. She stood up and addressed the entire studio audience. "You know what?" Ellen said, her voice carrying a new kind of authority. "I think Lily and I need a little privacy for this moment. Can everyone please close their eyes for just a minute? Even the cameras. Just trust me on this." The request was so unusual, so unexpected, that for a moment no one moved. But then, slowly, people began to close their eyes. The camera operators looked at their director, who made a quick decision and signaled them to keep rolling. But to pull back, to give Ellen and Lily space, the studio fell into an almost meditative quiet. With the pressure of all those watching eyes removed, Lily seemed to relax slightly. Ellen reached out slowly, carefully, and placed her hand over Lily's hands that were still clutching the package. "Just you and me now," Ellen whispered. "No one else exists in this moment, except us. Can you show me what you made?" With trembling fingers, Lily began to unwrap the package. The rainbow paper fell away to reveal a small wooden box, clearly handmade, painted in bright colors, with careful, childish precision. On the lid, in shaky but determined letters, someone had written, "Ellen's Courage." Ellen opened the box slowly. Inside, nestled in soft yellow fabric, was a single button. Not just any button, but clearly one that had been carefully chosen and decorated. It was covered in tiny painted stars and had a small loop of yellow thread attached to it. Ellen looked at the button, then at Lily, and something in her expression shifted. She was no longer a talk show host receiving a gift from a fan. She was a woman recognizing something profound, something that spoke to the deepest parts of human connection. "Lily," Ellen whispered, and her voice was thick with emotion now. "This is beautiful. Can you tell me about it?" Lily looked up at Ellen, and for the first time since sitting down, she seemed to see not the celebrity, not the host, not the performer, but just a person who was genuinely interested in what she had to say. But still, the words wouldn't come. Sophia, who had been watching this entire exchange with tears streaming down her face, leaned forward slightly. She took it from her favorite dress," Sophia whispered to Ellen. "The yellow one with stars that our mom made for her birthday last year. She said she wanted you to have something that made her feel brave." Ellen looked back at the button with new understanding. This wasn't just a craft project. This was a piece of a little girl's courage, literally cut from something that made her feel safe and strong, given to someone she believed embodied those same qualities. "Oh, Lily," Ellen said, and now her voice was breaking slightly. This is the most beautiful gift anyone has ever given me." She looked around the studio, at all the people sitting with their eyes closed, waiting patiently for this moment unfold. Then she looked back at Lily and made a decision that would change both of their lives. Ellen reached up and touched one of the buttons on her own blazer, the light blue one she wore for almost every show. It was a small, pearl-like button that had been with her through hundreds of interviews, thousands of laughs, countless moments of joy and connection. Slowly, carefully, she worked it loose from the fabric. "Lily," Ellen said, holding up her own button, "I want to trade with you. You give me your courage button, and I'll give you mine. Because I think we both need a little extra bravery sometimes." Lily stared at the button in Ellen's hand, then at her own gift in Ellen's other hand. Something was happening in her expression, a kind of recognition, a understanding that this wasn't just an exchange of objects, but something deeper. And then, in a voice so quiet that only Ellen and Sophia could hear it, Lily spoke her first words to a stranger in over 2 years. "Will it really work?" she whispered. The words were so soft, so unexpected, that Ellen almost thought she had imagined them. But Sophia gasped audibly, her hand flying to her mouth in shock and joy. Ellen leaned closer to Lily, speaking directly into her ear so that her response would be just for them. "It will work," she said, "because every time you touch it, you'll remember that you were brave enough to give me yours. And every time I touch yours, I'll remember the little girl who taught me what real courage looks like." Lily nodded solemnly and held out her hand. Ellen placed her button in Lily's palm, and then Lily placed her handmade button in Ellen's. For a moment, they just looked at each other, two people who had just shared something that transcended age, fame, and all the artificial barriers that usually separate us. "Can everyone open their eyes now?" Ellen called out, but she didn't take her gaze away from Lily. The studio audience opened their eyes to see Ellen sitting in the audience, holding a small decorated button like it was the most precious thing in the world, while a little girl in a yellow dress clutched Ellen's button in her small fist. "Ladies and gentlemen," Ellen said, standing up but staying close to Lily, "I want you to meet my friend Lily. She just gave me the greatest gift I've ever received, and she taught me something important about courage." The audience began to applaud, but Ellen held up her hand to quiet them. "Lily, would you like to come up on stage with me? You don't have to say anything to anyone else. Just come be brave with me for a minute." Lily looked at Sophia, who nodded encouragingly. Then she looked at the button in her hand, rubbing it between her fingers like a talisman. And then, slowly, she nodded. What happened next was pure magic. Ellen took Lily's hand and walked with her to the stage. But instead of putting her in the guest chair, Ellen sat down on the floor of the stage, cross-legged like a child. She patted the floor next to her, inviting Lily to sit beside her. "You know what I realized, Lily?" Ellen said, speaking to her, but allowing the audience and cameras to witness the conversation. "I realized that I wear this blazer every single day, and it has all these buttons, but I never really thought about them. They're just there. But you taught me that buttons can be special. They can carry our courage with them." Lily nodded, still holding Ellen's button tightly. "And I think," Ellen continued, "that maybe other people need courage buttons too. So here's what I want to do. I want to start something new. I want to give courage buttons to anyone who needs them. Because courage isn't something you're born with. It's something you choose every single day, every single moment." Ellen looked directly into the main camera. If you're watching this and you need a courage button, if you have someone in your life who could use a little extra bravery, send us your story. Send us your address, and we'll send you a courage button, because everyone deserves to feel as brave as Lily made me feel today. The audience erupted in applause, but this time, it wasn't the polite television applause of appreciation. It was the deep, heartfelt applause of recognition, of people who understood that they had just witnessed something that would stay with them long after the cameras stopped rolling. Lily looked out at all the people clapping for her, for them, for this moment. And something extraordinary happened. She smiled, not the small, careful smile she usually gave when she was trying not to be noticed, but a radiant, joyful smile that seemed to light up the entire studio. And then, in a voice that was stronger than her whisper, but still soft enough to be precious, she said, "Thank you, Ellen." The studio fell silent again, but this time it was the silence of awe, of witnessing a small miracle. Ellen's eyes filled with tears, and she reached over to give Lily the gentlest hug. "No, Lily," Ellen whispered back. "Thank you for reminding me what courage really looks like." The show ended that day, not with the usual dance party or final jokes, but with Ellen and Lily sitting on the stage floor, each holding their courage button, surrounded by an audience that had been reminded of something they had perhaps forgotten in the rush of daily life, that the smallest gestures can carry the greatest power, that true courage often whispers rather than shouts, and that sometimes the most profound teachers come in the smallest packages. 6 months later, the Ellen Show had distributed over 50,000 courage buttons to people around the world. Each one came with a card that told Lily's story and reminded the recipient that courage is something we can share, something we can give each other, something that multiplies when it's passed along. Lily still has Ellen's button. She carries it in her pocket every day and has started speaking to her teachers, her classmates, and even strangers when she needs to. She's not cured of her selective mutism. That's not how anxiety works, but she has a tool now, a reminder that she chose bravery once and can choose it again. And Ellen still has Lily's button, sewn carefully into the inside pocket of every blazer she owns. Before every show, every interview, every moment when she needs to remember why she does what she does, she touches that small, star-covered piece of fabric and remembers a 9-year-old girl who taught her that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the decision to be brave anyway. Because sometimes the most important conversations happen without words, until suddenly, miraculously, they do. But today, something different was waiting in the audience. Something that would remind everyone watching that sometimes the most profound conversations happen without words. Lily Martinez sat in the third row, her small hands folded tightly in her lap, wearing a pastel yellow sundress that her sister had carefully picked out that morning. At 9 years old, she had the kind of wide brown eyes that seemed to hold entire conversations, but her lips hadn't spoken a word to anyone outside her family in over 2 years.